I don't think that most people want to have to micromanage anybody, right? And I think that the single strongest reason for micromanagement is lack of trust. Therefore, when you want to bring someone on board, you want to think about how much do I believe that I can trust this person? Because I think I've learned over the years dealing with people that I don't want to want this for you more than you want it for yourself. I want to support you to get it, right? I have people who believe in me, but if I do not want it, there's no way them believing in me would have amounted to anything productive.
Most of us can point to a moment that changed our lives: a job, a leadership role, an opportunity. But if you look closely, many of those moments have something in common. Somebody somewhere believed in us before there was enough evidence to justify it. My guest today is someone whose life has been shaped by opportunities, trust, and the decision to grow into the expectations that came with them. Together, we will explore what happens when people see more in us than we can yet see in ourselves. Tordi, I'm very excited to have you on the show. I hope you're excited as I am.
Very much so.
Okay. Um, and I know we have history, Toddy, and it was one of the things that shaped these conversations. In early part of our life, when I was opportune to lead ISEC in Nigeria, one of the key decisions I made at the time was to have you on the team as the finance director for ISEC in Nigeria. As you would know, I wasn't very familiar with your work. Of course, I knew you as a person. I knew your work with ISEC in Port Harcourt, but not in greater detail. And so I had to rely on people just really trying to convince me about the prospect of working with you. And so I wanted to find out from you, what do you remember about the period before you got that opportunity to be on the MC?
First of all, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to have this discussion. And to your question, I think the period before having that opportunity to join the team on ISEC Nigeria's member committee team, I was really trying to decide for myself, what do I want? Am I in a place where I feel like I do not have enough opportunities to actualize the dreams and the aspirations that I cast my mind upon every other day? Or are there opportunities that I'm not being able to conceive, even if they exist around me? Right. And the best thing that came to my mind at the time was maybe just try what you can at least see at this point in time. Whatever the opportunity is, whatever the outcome, I would be better off living with myself, knowing that I tried but didn't succeed, than just staying there and taking no action whatsoever. I didn't know what to expect. All I was full of was hope, but I tried it anyway. And fortunately, what happened, and the rest is history.
Okay. I mean, speaking about being ready, what was your view about how ready you were for the opportunity? And this is prior to getting on the role. And after you had gotten the role and had a chance to interact with me in particular, how did you feel about, your level of readiness to really come on the team and perform?
In terms of my readiness, I'll be very frank with you, Charles. I can't say that I was 100% ready at the time. Instead, like this conversation clearly outlines, I had more people who believed in my ability to do it than I could imagine myself doing it. You'll recall back, if you think back to our history in ISEC in Nigeria. ISEC was the first. ISEC took me out of the Port Harcourt for the first time, right? Which was NC Enugu when you were LCP. And again, I had never gone to Lagos. ISEC took me to Lagos, so I can't say I was so exposed beyond the confines of Port Harcourt, right? And while I engaged with ISEC in Port Harcourt, led teams there and projects, I feel like I was able to build my capacity to a level where I can dare to go for opportunities. Then, based on how much more action I take, how much more success, and how daring I become, the outcome of those levels of risk taking, of actions, would then determine my level of readiness for the next role, or my level of confidence. I can say that I was 100% ready for the role as head of finance in ISEC in Nigeria, even though I studied finance and banking in school, because what I was studying was very, very core, more investments leaning than what we did in ISEC in Nigeria. And you will also recall that the role in ISEC in Nigeria was not only finance related, it was finance, legal, and administration. So it was not only going to be a finance role, but what I remember at the time in terms of preparing myself was asking questions. If you speak to Josh, he will tell you how I was able to consult him, then being my LC host, being the person who I could always talk to say, "Hi, Josh, what can I learn from this opportunity? What's there for me? What can I lean into from your own experience? Is this something that you think that I can learn on the job and deliver on, or is it something that you think that I best have all the skills I need to succeed in?" So, to answer your question quite frankly, I don't think that I was 100% ready, but I believe that what I was more equipped with was the desire to get things done than already having the skills and the confidence to be able to get it done.
Okay, interesting. And I know that at some point in the past, we must have had this conversation about how that selection process went, the fact that a lot of people were really looking out and rooting for you, right? But I don't know if prior to that you were aware of that. And so my question is, and prior to that, and even now that you know, how did it make you feel that people, were interested in, ensuring that you get an opportunity, especially with just being on the team with us at the time? Did you feel trusted or did you feel like you had something to prove? Walk me through how that feeling was like.
Right. I wasn't aware of how much people trusted me or how much people were pushing for me to get this opportunity. I absolutely were not aware of how people were rooting for me and trying to make sure or support me through that entire selection process. For some reason, even though they supported me so much, they decided to keep it away from me. Maybe because they wanted me to still go through the experience without having the idea that I'm gonna get it anyway, or people are supporting me and then everything is done and dusted. Probably they wanted me to put my best foot forward so that when you are making the decision, you can see the reasons that they've given you as to why they would recommend me for such a role, right? But after I was selected for this role and then getting to learn of the fact that these people, these persons were instrumental to recommending me even without my knowledge, it really made me believe that there's a part to myself that I wasn't aware of yet. That all the times where I didn't think maybe I was well equipped enough for this role, there are people who have actually seen more of myself that has given them the evidence to believe, Toddy, you can actually do this role, right? And even if you might not be the best at the start of this role, by the end of this role, you probably will be greater at it than you can ever imagine, right? So when I came to that realization, it gave me a different perspective on approaching this role, on approaching everything else that came afterwards, right? To think of myself as, yes, there might be challenges, but you can figure it out. You might not know what to do about it now, but you can ask questions. If you don't know what to do, you can do some research and try to learn, ask questions. Most of the problems that we were going to face at the time were not problems that were particular to us. People have faced similar problems before, might not be the same, but people have faced similar problems. You can ask questions and learn from the experiences of others. So at that point, once I learned of how much people believed in my ability to deliver on the role, it gave me so much more confidence in myself. It made me feel like, yes, even though I don't yet know it, it's entirely possible.
Very interesting. And I think when I first met you, I was astounded by your personality, for the lack of a better word. And I was even more impressed with the quality of the job you delivered. Like, I would always tell the team, like, you were often like the most important person on my team for certain reasons, right? And my question,
Thank
and
you.
because you spoke about just, on knowing about the confidence that was placed on you by a lot of people, and then deciding to work hard, whether you were from through research or other means, right? And I think I wanted to understand where some of those hunger you have, came from.
Indeed. So I think
And this is
when
not
it
peculiar to Isaac really, because I think that you have great hunger, and I know your story to a great degree, back then, and of course to where we are now. So, and I'm trying to really understand how you dig in, what role of hunger plays in your life, and where you think you draw that inspiration from.
no, true. I don't think it's particular to Isaac either. I think that Isaac is only a byproduct of of the source of this hunger. And to my earliest knowledge, what I can tell you right now that brought about my hunger and persistence for whatever I want is just growing up with my family. I think that even though while I was growing up, I didn't realize the kind of life I was living at the time, having grown up now and able to look back and to connect the dots, I can see clearly how instrumental my upbringing, how instrumental the family and community I had around myself really in, inculcated into me some values that has led me on to today. I'll give you specific examples. I mean, you know my story to a very large extent, and I can tell you now that growing up in the conditions that I grew up in kind of helped me. I always wanted to be someone that could cause a change if I'm not okay with what I'm currently experiencing. So whether it was me just being in Port Harcourt, not to say anything's wrong with Port Harcourt, but the things that I wanted in Port Harcourt were not in Port Harcourt, right? While living in Port Harcourt, there were opportunities that I wanted for myself that I didn't have. I'll give you a quick example. It was only until I moved to Lagos that I was able to get closer to opportunities like internships, right? So as a finance student going through 4 years of university, I never had the opportunity to go and become an intern, not because I did not know about things like internships, but those opportunities were not readily available because of the already existing high unemployment rate in the country, right? But when I came to Lagos, I became in closer proximity to these opportunities where you could learn and grow. So I think that when it comes to my hunger, I would say it comes from how I grew up, seeing my mother every day just grinding and trying to make a better life for our kids, seeing my sisters every other day. Sometimes we'd have to go to the markets to be able to sell things, go to the farm, be able to cultivate crops, and then go sell for us to be able to feed. And then as a young man growing up in such conditions, even though you love your parents so much, you love your family so much, you want to be someone who can contribute to changing your story. And there's knowing it's almost as if you're starting a 100-meter race from the marathon line. You cannot possibly complete that race and win if you don't have the hunger to persist, if you don't have the hunger to pursue and pursue and pursue. Knowing that there might be challenges, knowing that you don't even know if the next challenge you're going to be able to overcome it. But what you just know is one more day and you keep on going. So I think that's the root cause of my hunger. But as you grow, you get stronger, you get better, you get smarter, you get wiser as well, and you're able to leverage more opportunities, leverage more resources and people in your life that are able to become much more a bigger and more sustainable support system for you to succeed. But my hunger comes from seeing how I grew up.
All right, great. And something I've always, and I think I've mentioned, but I have a personal opinion that you're a reliable person, partly because you are a reliable teammate, right? The
Thank
conditions
you.
of our work at the time, you know, as young students or graduates, as the case was, meant that it was a lot to handle for a lot of the folks that will get on the team.
Right.
And you were one of those who I trusted 100% completely. And it meant that I could, assign things to you without any doubt that it would get done, right? And that made me focus on a lot of the other guys, in trying to support in the different capacities that I could, or the work that we were doing at the time. But then I wanted to really understand, while I thought you were reliable and, you didn't have anything for me to be concerned about, did you personally struggle? Did you think that you had moments where you struggled? And what was that? What was it like if you did struggle?
Definitely. I can tell you very categorically that there were moments where I struggled. But also sometimes, even though I knew that I could bring these issues to you, I felt like I needed to have been able to solve them by myself. Right. You're very correct when you say the role it was quite a challenging one for us. Also putting into perspective our predicaments as young graduates at the time and coming from the backgrounds that we come from was particularly not easy. And while I was in that role, and frankly, I appreciate your kind words on my performance and the relationship that we were able to build. There were definitely times where I struggled, and this was particularly in the early days of getting into the role, right, where you're trying to get your foot in and trying to understand what does it mean to lead finance for. an organization like ISAC in Nigeria. You're leading an organization now in a capacity where in all over Nigeria you have over maybe 700 or 1,000 young people at any point in time who the network flows through you and goes on from there. Or maybe further down the line where you're able to, how are you able to, as finance lead, to tell your teammates that this month there's no salary, and you still expect them to be able to um, come to work the next day with the same hunger and the same zeal to perform and to change the reality just like we wanted to from day one. There were those tough times, but also particularly with when it comes to the finances of ISAC in Nigeria. If you remember clearly, you recall that there were huge debts that we came into the team to inherit. We inherited some huge debts. In that particular role, I struggled so many times to think about how are we going to leave this team? When we leave, are we going to leave higher debts or are we going to leave lower debts? Of course, preferably we would want to leave lower debts or maybe actually service all our debts and leave the organization on a clean slate. But as a finance lead, these things give you a lot of cause to think and to ponder because you want to be able to make a change, but what are the resources you have to make this change? Quite frankly, the network was the best answer, right? Whether it's exchanges from the LCs or even within us as a team to try to make things happen for ourselves. But these were some times that I struggled. On a personal note as well, just like every other person on the team, leaving your family. For me, this was my first time leaving my family. I had maybe been to Lagos once prior to this time. My entire life from childhood all through university was in Port Harcourt, right? So now I'm getting to leave my family for the first time. We're now moving to Lagos we are in a different setting where, aside Isaac's, I probably know nobody. Getting used to Lagos, getting used to living with my teammates. These were things that, even though looking back now, I'm happy that I was able to overcome them. At the time when were not very easy, and you have to merge this also with NYSC at the same time. It wasn't the easiest 1 year of my life, but I can categorically tell you that's one of the most insightful and growth focused spaces that I've ever been in.
I think we never really focus on the fact that people are actually leaving their families and maybe mostly for the first
Indeed,
time. Uh, it wasn't the case for me. I had less family when I was little, but
indeed,
yeah, like you're making me reflect on that, and that's quite true for some people, and you probably could explain some of the struggle we'll see. But then I just really like to know, did you, beyond me, because do you feel like you had the support of your teammates?
indeed, yes, yes, yes. I think what helped most with having your teammates as a support system was the fact that we're living together. I think if we
Okay.
all lived apart, we would not have the interpersonal understanding that we had. Take for instance, how many were 6 boys and 2 girls, right? Living in a 3 bedroom apartment in Yaba, Lagos for an extended period of 1 year at the least. There was no way we quarreled in that house. We ate together in the same plates. We walked together. We did literally everything together. We went through all emotions together. We laughed together. We had everything through those ins and outs of our relationships and our experiences and shared experiences with one another. We got to understand each other. Now, with the understanding of each other's realities came, okay, maybe if Charles is going through XYZ, I know how to be there for him. Or if Opayemi is going through this, if Tolani is going through that, if there's a support that they need. As a matter of fact, take for instance the opportunity I got to, maybe I'm jumping ahead in this conversation, but for the purpose of this explanation, let me give this example. When the opportunity I got to move to the US, remember I had already applied for the opportunity way back in January of 2019, but there were so much applications, I think over 900. The day I resent in my resume was a day where we were about to leave the office, and I think the then operations manager in ISAC in the US or Atlanta sent in just a message on the WhatsApp group for OGVs or operations people. Sage saw it and sent it to our group. Then I just went back to open it. I thought this would be good for you. But beyond that, even the workings of our roles as team members, I think living together gave us such strong perspective on the realities and experiences of one another that it made us able to support one another when the time came, as however needed. So I can say I got
Yeah.
good support, of course.
Funny thing, I don't remember this story exactly in terms of Sage bringing that to a group. But yeah, okay, that's fine. I didn't know. Maybe I knew, but it's
Yeah,
been years, so I've,
yeah.
I've
This
it's
came this
probably
came
skipped
later
me.
on. I think this was maybe around. I applied first in June, but this came later
Mhm.
on in like I applied first in January,
I
but
mean,
this came later
I
on in like June.
yeah, I knew very well when you applied, but I didn't know the circumstances that it had come from the OGV
Indeed,
group and Sunday had shared it
right.
and the WhatsApp.
Yeah,
But as we go through this conversation, Toby, I've been speaking about trust a lot. First of all, the trust to get you on the team, and quite frankly, the trust to get every other person that was on the team on the team. But also really exploring how responsibilities were managed on the team, which again
right.
usually translates to how much trust I have on you guys and you guys have on of me, and we sort of have of each other. And I wanted to understand, how has that entire process changed you? And by the process I mean, how has having the trust of everyone in that moment changed your perspective of our life?
That's a good question. You see, Charles, there is this really heavy value that you get from living with the people that our teammates like we did and working together. There's this really immense realization that anything is possible and that it doesn't matter where you're coming from, you can definitely get to where you're going to, right? I do still feel like that experience kind of unlocked something in my head. And this might sound cliche to say, but it is absolutely how I feel genuinely. Charles, remember when you first with the first time that I met you, I was LC member in ISEC Port Harcourt. You had come for Project Pink. I think then Vivian was our
We met
LCP.
then.
That was the first time I met you. Yeah.
I
And
was
then
LCP then. I came to Port Harcourt for the project Pinkly, but
indeed,
I don't recall we met. Oh my god!
yeah, we did. I have very clear memory of this. Right, that was the first time that we met. Later on, we got to work in ISEC Nigeria. Of course, you would. I mean, I briefly spoke to you at the time because it was in our LC meeting and I had to leave. I was schooling from home at the time. I had to go back home, so we didn't really spend time to talk and get to know each other. But I remember you being our guest that day in our LC meetings, and later on in life, you became my MCP, right, alongside various other teammates, my fellow MCVPs. And one thing that I can tell you that I took away from that experience is it doesn't matter what I don't have. What matters is what I can create. I have this from that experience. I got this belief in myself that I can actually compete and win. And if I compete and I don't win, I'll compete again until I win. The reason why I say this is, Charles, remember there was a certain huge number. I don't want to say that number on here. There was a certain huge number of debt that we came into term, and when we
Yeah,
left, 80% of it had gone. 80%.
yeah,
We were earning very minimal salary, or maybe I should call it a stipend in Nigeria at the time, and this debt was in thousands of euros, monies that we had never heard of individually prior to that time or even seen. But we had to work hard to make sure that we service this debt. I don't remember. I don't know if you remember. And
I
for us
do.
to get that done, it took the workings of every member of that team, whether it's Victory managing sales and trying to get us various partnerships, whether it's with Facebook or whoever that we were working with at the time, or is it Sunday and O2 and Opeyemi driving operations, making sure that maybe you can also get. It took so much, but we were all people whom our backgrounds never prepared us for this reality. Even though we're in ISEC in various LCs, we did not have this level of responsibility. It was
Yeah,
responsibility on a different scale than I have ever felt or handled prior to this time. But the fact that each and every one of us realized that we are here now, it doesn't matter now what happened prior to us. What are we going to do? What is going to be the story that is told of us when our time is gone? Or, more importantly, what can we proudly beat our chest to say we did and we left behind in ISEC in Nigeria? Even though this conversation was not something that we consistently had and discussed on, it was the innate thoughts that we had in our minds, and just wanted to be the one thing that we were remembered for. And even if people forgot about us, let the facts not fail us, right? And at the end of the day, there was this mere stronghold on us that caused us to collaborate more, to work hand in hand together. Now, eventually, when we moved abroad and these opportunities came and we moved on, there was no doubt in our minds that we could deliver,
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
Particularly seeing you going from what happened with DHL, right? Knowing how well you deserved that role. Till today, when I think about it a lot. And it hurts me so much, right? But
Oh
knowing
my
how well you
God.
deserve that role. And it didn't even make you, I'm sure you're not, you're the least expressive person I know, but I'm sure it caused you worries in some magnitude, right? But it's you moved on to the next opportunity to say, this is not the end of my story. I will create my own realities. I'll create my own opportunities. I'll create the success that I want. I don't care if I've lost that opportunity. There's more for me. And you did that for yourself. So even if we don't talk about this and we don't get to give you these commendations as often as we should, me sitting back and realizing, oh wow, Charles really did that, kind of switches something in my head to say, now I'm going to the US. I'm going to work for a Fortune 50 company. I don't care who came before me. I don't care who is coming after me. All I'm going to focus on is while I'm here, I will do my job to the best of my abilities and make sure that I leave a fine imprint for what people should know me by. So to come back to your question, Charles, it really that experience opened up my head and my brain to conceiving thoughts and having perspectives that even though I'm not the finest when it comes to in terms of where do people come from, what have they been exposed to, my grit to get something done, my grit to win, my grit to be successful will be enough. I would work as
Yeah.
hard as I need for as long as I need to achieve the goal that I set for myself. That experience was life changing to say the least.
Yeah. You're making me introspect quite a lot on this conversation. And quite frankly, we've gone off script, but that's okay. And I think someday I'm going to speak about it. But yeah, mentally, I did struggle with losing the opportunity. But again, I could share the full detail, maybe on your podcast, who knows.
Okay.
But yeah, sometimes I'll share the details and I could share that in private, but like this is not about me. But yeah, I did struggle, but
Right.
like you said, I had to pick up myself as well and get to the next opportunity and make things happen for myself. And I'm glad as well. But
Right.
then having looked at your experience study, and I'm wondering, how do you then look at other people who are in the starting point or the early part of their journey? You know, do you change how you see them now? And what sort of conversation would you be having with them?
Interesting question, Charles. You see, when it was my time and when I was in the position that these people are in right now, I had tremendous support. I would never say I engineered my own success all by myself. That would be a very big fat lie. I had my mentor, Bitabo Gogo, who sat me down to say, Toddy, I don't care if you're going to succeed at this thing, you have to go for it first. I had you, I had my mom, my dad, I had friends who were really dogged in support and in conviction that I could do this. And so when I get to talk to young people or people younger than myself, because I don't think I'm that old either, but when I get to talk to people who are in the position that I was at the time, I tend to really think of myself as one who can, number one, be real, because I don't think it will help anybody at all in any way, shape, or form to that they cannot relate to what you're saying, right? If you were once in their shoes, how can you share and relate with them? This is what I tell them, Charles, to be very frank. You are in a position now that you get to determine for yourself what you want. Do you want to, at the end of the day, achieve A, B, C, D? What do you know right now, and what is the gap in between? So what's your knowledge gap? What's your opportunity gap? The truth is, wherever you are, that opportunity exists there. And if you cannot see it, maybe wherever you think that is, you have to go there. But from where you are right now, there has to be this innate curiosity for development. Because if you want to compete, there has to be something that you know. If you being Nigerian standard is not the standard. World standard is the standard. So do you want to compete on the global stage, or do you want to be mediocre and settle for whatever you can get? Right. So I think that, Charles, to answer your question, most times when I discuss with people, and when I discuss with, I tell them, pursue the opportunities where you see it and don't stop, because you don't have the luxury of tapping out.
Yep.
You don't have the luxury of saying, okay, I don't want this anymore. I'll give an example. Right now, living in Belgium, there are people that I know that can just tap out. Why? There is welfare benefits from the government, the unemployment benefits, and while I applaud these provisions and welfare provisions for people by the government, we don't have nothing close to that in Nigeria, right? So if there's something that you want to achieve as a as a young boy, young girl in Nigeria, and you're in a predicament where you don't feel like you have enough resources, sufficient enough to help you win, you don't have that luxury of tapping out if you want to win, right? Just like I didn't have that luxury of tapping out, because remember,
Yeah.
even with Isaac in Nigeria, I got only accepted at the third round,
Yeah.
right?
I
And
remember.
I don't know if you were playing mind games with me, but you waited
I think
until the
you and
last
Badmus, you
minute.
guys got on the team
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
third round, and it was the
the
final
last
selection round as well.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was, so you don't have the luxury of now if you
I
want it
think
bad enough.
with Badmus, I was playing mind games, but with you, um, like I said, it was like not knowing what this to decide, because like I had you and Tosin, right? It
Right.
was, but then I had to like get a finance person on board, and I then started having that conversations that led to you just going on the team. But so with you, it wasn't mind games. I
Yeah,
just wanted to clarify
indeed. Of course. I mean, even if it was mind games, I think it worked. So in the
that.
end, good approach. But to get back on track, the truth
Yeah,
is your curiosity has to be your biggest weapon if you don't have everything that you think you need, right? Are you curious enough to try to go and learn? I remember when I was in Nigeria in Uniport, and I was trying to apply for scholarships to move abroad and study abroad and do all these things. I didn't have a laptop. As whenever when I think of it, it makes me laugh, because I would write out my essays with hand, then go to a friend's house to type, use their laptop to type, so that I could then upload and submit my scholarship applications. Right. So my point is, your curiosity has to be your weapon, because you already know you do not have every resource that you need. If you needed the best MacBook right now to learn programming, you don't have it. So are you going to say you're
yeah,
not going to learn programming? Maybe you want to go to government centers or libraries or wherever you think you have access to a laptop to start to learn, because what you learn from then you build upon. That becomes your knowledge. Nobody can take it from your head. So that's the single best advice that I can give them. Of course, don't give up, but at the end of the day, your curiosity has to be your biggest weapon. You have to keep pursuing that one thing that you want. It's gonna work out.
all right. Just getting into it, and so you've gone through this change process, and I believe you're in positions where you're someone that then give people a chance, right, through your work.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to understand, when you're trying to make decisions, what are you thinking about? What are you looking for in the person you want to give a chance?
The first thing that I look out for at any point in time is how much you want it, right? Because I think I've learned over the years dealing with people that I don't want to want this for you more than you want it for yourself. I want to support you to get it, right? I have people who believed in me, but if I did not want it, there's no way them believing in me would have amounted to anything productive. So I don't care if you are not the best in what you do now. I want to know how much do you want to be good at this thing? How great do you want to be at it? How much do you relish in your curiosity, right? And beyond that is also the consideration of interpersonal relationships. How do you want to leverage people, relate with people? How relatable can you be? But more importantly, when it comes to getting the job done, how can I relate with you? How can I gauge how much you want this? The reason why I want to gauge how much you want this is I don't want to force feed you what you don't want for yourself. Because I feel like when people try to do that, you become the enemy. Because clearly this person doesn't want this for themselves. Not that they don't want it enough. They don't want this for themselves. If you're force feeding them these things, obviously this ends up becoming a tragedy because they don't want this for themselves. and then you cannot make them do what they don't put their hearts to do, right? I can try to drive better development in someone who has the curiosity but doesn't have enough opportunity to actualize what they're curious about, right? And then
Yeah.
again, I want to see, is it someone who I can recommend based on interpersonal relationship, right? Based on interpersonal relationship, is it someone that I can recommend? Is it someone that just taking it as keeping aside the aptitude of getting the job done, how I know you, because you are going to have to work with other people. Is this someone that I would want to recommend for an opportunity and be sure that my reputation will not be tarnished,
Yeah.
right? So these are things that I look out for: your curiosity and the interpersonal relationship and skills that you have.
And just some question that comes to mind. We ask for too much proof before we believe in people. And speaking from the perspective of someone who's made decisions about getting people on board, letting people go, just deciding all of these things, it's enormous pressure. It's also strategically inclined because you want to make a decision that you're not sure of the outcome as well, right? You could be wrong and you face a tremendous amount of challenge. But I wanted to ask your perspective from the other side of things as well. And I know you've experienced both sides, but do you think that the world asks too much proof of a person before taking a chance on them? Or do you think it's really okay that they have to make you go through all of this rigorous process?
In short answer, yes. But let me buttress my point. It can be both, quite frankly. But to me, yes. For example, when you go to apply, when we have people who are just coming out of college, going for jobs and entry level jobs are saying 3 years experience. Where do we expect them to have gotten those experiences? Right?
Yeah.
Because then they apply and they then in the twinkle of an eye they are rejected for those opportunities. In those instances, I think that the world asks for ridiculous amounts of proof and evidence before they take a chance on people. But also, in different regard, I can say that people who are hiring don't want to get hiring wrong because of the learning curve they have to go through to either train someone to be good at something or train someone to be trustworthy, right? I don't think most people, I want to say most people because I believe that there are exceptions, but I don't think that most people want to have to micromanage anybody, right? And I think that the single strongest reason for micromanagement is lack of trust. Therefore, when you want to bring someone on board, you want to think about how much do I believe that I can trust this person? How much is this someone that I have the instinct to that, okay, based on how I can live with this person, I can trust them? Because the process of training, you don't want that to be, even though oftentimes people will always get it wrong, you don't want that to be something that becomes too uniform and you have to do that every 3 months, for example, right? But I think that overall the world asks for too much proof before they are able to give opportunities to people, especially when background, when upbringing, when their past and realities are not considered, right?
Yeah.
I don't think everybody has the same outlook and perspective on life, even though we might be vying for the same role and the same opportunities. For someone who maybe was born in Port Harcourt to be where I am now, and then there's somebody else who's also grown and lived in Belgium, going for the same opportunities. I don't think that getting to the point that we've gotten to now, our perspectives on life are the same. However, that doesn't make me more deserving of the opportunity than the next man. However, I think that it's important that we put the entire picture into perspective and not just be too quick to write people off. Because
All right.
if we put people's story into perspective, gives us the right, it equips us with the right reality of those people in mind, and that helps you make a better decision more often than not.
All right. I sort of agree as well. It's one controversial opinion
It
flying
really is.
around right now, but yeah, thanks for sharing your perspective on that as well. And just another question for you as well. If someone somewhere is watching and is currently waiting for a chance or an opportunity, what do you hope they understand?
Great. To that person, I would say it's so important, the belief and trust people have in you, but more importantly, when you realize what you're capable of, that trust and conviction in yourself is even more important. Why? Because when you get to that point, it becomes more important to yourself to not let yourself down versus not let people down. There's something that you're pursuing. There's a goal. There is a lifelong goal that you designed for yourself, right? That you've willed for yourself. If there's any opportunity that you're pursuing, it takes you working it. It doesn't matter how much people want it for you.
Yeah.
What's most important is your working of it. If everybody believes in you and they recommend you for a role, you still have to apply. You still have to review. If you don't do either of these two, you don't get the role. If there's an opportunity, if you're starting a company and you're seeking funding, if you don't go for it, you probably just don't get it, even if someone recommends it. So while I can ask you and employ you to really take in and accept the belief and conviction people have in you, when you realize what your capacity is, what you're capable of, and what is possible, the conviction you have in yourself, that confidence is so important that I would ask you, don't lose it.
All right. I appreciate that. For the final question, Todi, and I'm curious, when you look back at the person, you were years ago, who maybe at some point you had doubts, you didn't feel like you were ready, you felt like you were ready. Other times you feel like, am I going to shit the bag? Am I going to be able to deliver on this, right? Would you have believed then that you would end up here?
Maybe not here right now, right? But
Hmm.
definitely somewhere great. And I think until today, when I have these kind of conversations with my mom and my aunts, and they will always tell you, this is something that I always said that was going to happen, that I was going to get this opportunity. And when I get it, I would never let go of it. Right. And since I was a child, I used to say this to my mom because I grew up seeing her suffer a lot to provide for us. Right. And I didn't,
Yeah.
at the time when I was saying these things, I did not know how, of course, I did not know how this was going to work out, but I had the
Yeah.
strong belief that this was going to work out. And for some
Yeah.
reason, all my responsibility was at that time was to prepare. And when the opportunity came, I'm not going to let it go. And I'll give you one example, Charles. When I was doing the interview for the UPS opportunity while still at CC Hub Lagos while we were on the team, I was really surprised. If you remember the day I got the news, I was really surprised as to the fact that I actually got selected for this role, right? I was immensely surprised as to the fact that I got selected for this role, and I didn't know exactly how I was going to take it. I didn't think that I was the best at anything. Of course, I had my imposter syndrome still ravaging my mind. But when I got to Atlanta and I was working with my team and I was working with everybody after I met them and I see how they are working and how different this reality is to me, I was asking myself this question, Charles. What exactly did they see in me that made them choose me? Because there were over 900 persons from across the world that apply for this role? What was it that made them say Toddy is the person for the role? And I asked them, and his name is Anthony Walsh, my then manager. He told me that while we were on the interview, that people were walking behind me, and I was not at all discouraged or losing focus in any way, shape, or form. And that gave him the idea that I was very focused and not someone that would lose focus. And to me, I couldn't believe that that was a simple gesture that
Yeah.
kind of sounded the alarm in his head that this was a person for this role. I don't know how many persons they reviewed or interviewed. However, I can categorically say that when I got the opportunity, I was so locked in to use this word. I was so locked in on that interview that I was telling myself, if I'm going to fail this interview, it should not be because I fumbled it. It might be because someone else was better at me than me in this instance, but it should not be because I did something that made me
Yeah.
fumble it. And I
Yeah.
think I've always thought that this opportunity was going to come and I was ready for it.
Amazing. And one would think that someone walking behind you in an interview, in some cases, will get you disqualified. And in your case, it actually
Yeah.
elevated you. But yeah, Toddy, I'm so happy with your story. I still have your picture with the first day at work in UPS in Atlanta. I would never let it go.
I was
I tell
sitting
you,
like this.
yeah, but yeah, I'm excited for you, and I'm glad you decided to join me and the Lens team on the show today. Thank you for your time,
Anytime,
Toddy.
man. Anytime. Absolutely.
All
Anytime.
right.
Thanks for having me.
Most of us can point to people who helped change our lives. It's not because they had all the answers, but They saw something in us before we could see it in ourselves. The question is what we do with that gift. Tordi's story is one answer. The rest is up to you. Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next episode.